Thank you, Chairman Hughes and committee, for inviting our testimony today. I'm Elizabeth Phillips from Dallas, Texas, where I grew up and still live today. For today's purposes, I'm a certified crime victim advocate and the sister of Trey, for whom this public safety bill is named. A special thank you to our tireless Senate sponsor, Vice Chair Paxton, who personally knows Kanakuk victims, even a former student of hers living under an NDA. I also want to thank Senator Parker, who represents my district, as well as the many senators and House reps who have co-sponsored and supported Trey's law this session. When HB 748 author Representative Leach presented Trey's law to the House floor a month ago, it passed unanimously and now has 17 co-sponsors. That vote and message of overwhelming support honors the tragic loss of my late brother and the countless survivors of child sexual abuse like him who didn't survive. Sadly, a lot of truth dies with people because of NDAs, and that only protects bad actors, which is contrary to public interest. To me, that is the point of Trey's law and this hearing today. Public safety, protecting children, prioritizing life, liberty, and the pursuit of healing and happiness. Trey wasn't able to heal. He was silenced to his grave by Kanakuk Ministries, a Christian summer camp and global enterprise based out of Southwest Missouri. Texas has historically been among their largest markets. My brother had many layers to his journey of injustice. First, he was groomed and abused from age 7 to 17 by a serial sex offender who was sentenced to 3 life terms in 2010. Trey was 20 years old when Pete Newman went to prison. Then Trey was forced by the civil statute of limitations in Texas to file his civil case against Kanakuk before the age of 23, while he was just trying to finish college and process unimaginable trauma amidst a Christian culture applauding Kanakuk and hailing its CEO, Joe White, as a spiritual hero. Trey's civil case ended with a settlement that included a restrictive NDA, making Kanakuk and its representatives another perpetrator of abuse in Trey's tragic and unnecessary demise. Institutional abuse on top of sexual abuse. I have actually learned more about the extent of my brother's abuse since his death than I knew in his life due to the NDA he was under. Trey told a therapist, "They will always control me and I'll never be free," before he died by suicide in August 2019 at age 28. He hesitated even to tell his story in confidential therapeutic settings for fear that Kanakuk would come after him again like they did an earlier John Doe. Since my family was public about Trey's abuse in his Dallas Morning News obituary, we've heard from so many other victim families with similar stories, some here today. Now that I know what I know, I'm trying to be a voice for Trey and countless other victims of sexual abuse and trafficking who are suffering in the shadows due to NDAs that restrict them from speaking in settings like this. If they could be here to testify without the threat of legal repercussions, there would be a line out the door. Some of the Kanakuk NDAs I've seen are multiple pages long. I'm going to share some short excerpts that have come to my attention by various survivors who are legally silenced to this day, so you can understand exactly the restrictions they live under into adulthood. Here's one. Plaintiff agrees to refrain from publicly criticizing, ridiculing, disparaging, or defaming any of the released parties or persons to any third party with or through any written or oral statement or image, including any statements made via websites, blogs, postings to the internet, emails, or social media at any time following the execution of this agreement. Another version states, the parties agree that neither party will make any written or oral statement portraying the other negatively. Any breach of this confidentiality clause shall constitute breach of this confidential settlement agreement and release, allowing the parties to seek damages for such breach. The releasers, the victims, have executed the same for the purposes and intents contained therein by their own free individual act and will. These are minor victims of childhood crimes. Until very recently, when some brave survivors broke their NDAs to speak with investigative journalists, dozens of Kanakuk victims believed that they were the only ones who had been abused there because the story barely reached the media. So when the floodgates opened and survivors coalesced around a petition asking Kanakuk to release victims from their NDAs, we garnered nearly 30,000 signatures in a matter of months. Kanakuk's initial response was a public statement and blatant lie that they do not use NDAs. Those of us who knew better called that out, so they said they do use NDAs, but it's only at the request of the victims. Survivors called out that lie, and Kanakuk changed their tune again, admitting in an open letter from Joe White that they use NDAs, but it's their insurance company that makes them do it, and in order to avoid repercussions, victims should not disclose settlement terms. Kanakuk won't come clean, and we're not giving them any more chances. With your help, we're going to change the law. The law on NDAs must be clarified because we cannot trust institutions to do the right thing. Facts About Kanakuk, an advocacy group launched by survivors in 2021, has since received continuous tips with hundreds of abuse allegations against more than 68 unique perpetrators associated with Kanakuk dating from 1958 to today. We learned about a new one just last week. The same family has been at the helm of Kanakuk throughout, while victims have been lawfully hushed by state-sanctioned NDAs Kanakuk and its insurers demanded behind closed doors with intimidating attorneys. That is exactly what led my brother to a psychotic break and a downward spiral thereafter. So for my family, it's no exaggeration for me to claim this as a matter of life and death. When you take someone's voice away, especially a child's, you take away their most linear path to healing. When you muzzle victims, kids, college kids, survivors of any age, it conceals important information from the public domain. Trey's law should be a welcomed and minimum measure of justice so that future sexual assault victims do not have my brother's outcome. There's a quote that says, "Shame dies when stories are told in safe places." Tennessee made itself safer in 2018 when they became the first state to pass a bill prohibiting NDAs in civil child sexual abuse cases. Missouri is one signature away from doing the same. Trey's law has passed the General Assembly there and is on the governor's desk. And 18 states, along with US Congress, have clarified the NDA issue for adult survivors of sexual assault. It's time we expand that to include children, and Texas can be a leader on this. Because NDAs have protected powerful people and institutions for a long time, there is widespread misinformation claiming that NDAs are actually in the best interest of survivors. I hope it is already clear to you that this is not the case, but I'm happy to clear up any misconceptions if there are questions. So to wrap this up, my focus and work is on the prevention of institutional child sexual abuse. So I support both bills that give victims their voices back. But I must emphasize that HB 748 is the strongest version of Trey's law, with 0 no votes in the other chamber, and Texas can decide whether to lead or follow. I am myself a survivor of a sexual assault in college. And that's the first time I'm saying this publicly. I was a college kid when I endured that. So I personally feel strongly that the abuse of NDAs in any civil cases pertaining to sexual assault should be banned by law, and whomever opposes that has something to hide. NDAs, when weaponized in sexual assault cases, only protect bad actors. My request to this committee is whichever version you decide to go with, put that in the House bill and vote the House bill out promptly so we have a chance to get this to the governor's desk by deadline this session. I'm asking my home state to pass Trey's law this session as an urgent matter of public safety. There have been 17 suicides associated with Kanakuk abuse known to date. I know Texas stands on the side of life. All emotion aside, this is just good policy. NDAs are for trade secrets, not trauma secrets. Full stop. Thank you for hearing me and the brave witnesses to follow. I'm prepared to take any questions.
And thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here.